Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Hook Turn podcast with my good friend Sanbib Ahmed. And how are you today, Sanbib?
I'm very good. So we're currently not sitting apart in different cities, but currently we're actually in the same city, both in Sydney. So we're recording together, which is always very fun. We've done one of these before, only a few episodes ago, but yeah, it's looking forward to another episode.
It's lovely weather in Sydney today. Very sunny after what I believe was a few weeks of rain. So getting warmer, and we're happy to be in spring. So let's get started. This week's episode, we have some news coming out of the Munich Motor Show. Probably the biggest news, and which will also be the subject of our first topic, is the 2026 BMW Neue Klasse, the iX3. So BMW's successor to the previous iX3 and their electric X3 series, an all new vehicle, all new philosophy. It's a huge announcement for BMW. So we'll spend some time talking about that. We did touch on the iX3 a few weeks ago, but now that we have the full production images and specifications, I think it's really good to go back over it again. Secondly, we'll talk about the new Honda Prelude. So this is Honda's sporty coupe that they are calling a GT, a Grand Touring car. So we'll see what we think about that. And then now our last topic, we've over the last few episodes we've been doing various car sales challenges. This time we're going to switch a little bit and we're going to talk about two cars that we owned ourselves. So we'll talk about what we liked about them, what we hated about them, some of our favorite memories, and that will be our podcast. So let's get started with the first topic, which is the 2026 BMW Neue Klasse iX3. So a lot of interesting specifications with this car. It's the first production model of BMW's bold Neue Klasse platform. So Neue Klasse is a reference to one of the original 2002 or '02 series sedans, and historically the Neue Klasse, it was called the Neue Klasse because it was back then in the 60s. It was a new philosophy for BMW, basically a reorienting of the business, and they really used this to sort of get back in the game. They had a period of crisis after the Second World War, and this Neue Klasse really started to bring things back for them. That was that was a big development for BMW. In terms of the exterior, new design language, interior, new design language as well, panoramic iDrive, so that panoramic sort of head-up display and windshield projected instrument cluster. We have an 800-volt electrical architecture with a range of more than 800 kilometers on the WLTP cycle with 400 kilowatts of charging. It's a very fast charging with a very long range as well. We also have what BMW has done is for the entire life cycle of the vehicle, they've really focused on sustainability, so whole of life sustainability. So they've built the car using 1/3 secondary raw materials and following circular economy principles. So what that means is that when the car reaches its end of life, a lot of the materials and uh, production technologies and so on that have been used to develop the vehicle can be recycled into other things. And that even extends to the actual factory that is being used to produce the car. So zero fossil fuel usage on site, and the factory itself is powered by renewable energy as well. So a very big sort of vision, and this is sort of basically the first product of this revolutionary approach to car making and car design from BMW. So, Stanley, what are your initial thoughts on this car?
So obviously, this car was highly anticipated, being the first of the new, basically showcasing the new design language for BMWs that will continue across their whole model lineup. But I actually think that rather than the exterior, the technology that powers this car is probably the most interesting, and it really gives us a preview as to where the future of electric cars will go. Because right now, lots of people are always worried that, okay, electric cars, they don't have enough range. You have to always be concerned about when you basically how long it takes to charge compared to how long it takes to fill up petrol, etc. So ultimately, as with everything, while this is currently going to be on a pretty expensive BMW when it launches in Australia, this kind of tech eventually will trickle down to your regular mainstream cars. So we can expect in 5-6 years time a 2030 EV to have these sorts of specs, like and just from regular mainstream brands. So cars getting over 800 kilometers worth of range consistently on one full charge, or for 10-minute charge being able to basically do 300 plus kilometers. These are all ways that and technologies that will allow people to make that transition from petrol to electric much more easily, because it will basically, the few concerns that are left with regards to the move to electric cars will now be sort of sorted. Other than that, I think that this BMW, yes, we know that that modern day cars are all transitioning to screens, significantly so, but I think this interpretation in terms of the interior is really, really clever, because it has got a dedicated infotainment, and while it's got an extremely large screen ahead of the driver, that's more just for the key control functions of the car, and obviously speed, basically the driver cluster as well. So it's not like the whole thing is just one singular screen, which in my opinion doesn't look as good. It basically does it properly, where you've got a proper screen in the middle that allows you to control all the climate control, the infotainment, whereas another screen just controls, or doesn't control anything, but basically is your critical driving information. In terms of the exterior, I mean, I reckon that it's one of those exteriors that when you see it in person, I suspect it will look quite good. I think it's one of those exteriors that I already really like the rear anyway. I reckon at night it will look amazing. And even the front, design, the light design, but even the front, I reckon when you see it in person, I think it will look rather striking. So ultimately, the reality is now, what I've always been curious is that EVs don't always have to look like petrol cars, because they don't have this, like, you don't have to necessarily have the engine at the front. Yes, you need something at the front, like a hood for crash protection. You always see kind of nothing. But the idea of EVs should ideally be that they can slowly transition away from the limitations of when they had to design a car thinking of a petrol engine. So it'll be interesting to see if but then we also know, and it's why Mercedes-Benz for their new car is moving back to a more traditional design for the GLC. We also know that customers sometimes don't like it if their cars look too futuristic. So you don't want to suddenly have this very different looking car. And I think BMW have got a nice blend. iX3 is also an excellent car to launch this new design language of, because I have to imagine it's one of the highest selling cars, an SUV, but a medium-sized SUV, literally the biggest segment.
The heart of the market.
The biggest segment in all of Australia. So it's a great car to launch off. It will come here within a year, basically, mid-2026. So the reality, though, will be that when it does launch in Australia, it'll probably be significantly more expensive. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised if even the base you'll need 80 plus, which So and the highest spec models will need 100 plus, which will mean that it will still be out of reach for many people, because as we've spoken about before, certainly in countries like Australia, less so in Europe, not as many. If people are going to spend a lot of money on a car, not as many people are still confident enough in Australia to spend a significant sum of money on an electric car, because of the fears that we've said earlier. Still, a lot of people, depreciation's another big factor. So if people are going to spend a lot of money on a car, they at least want to go hybrid, FEV, or obviously full petrol. This is a very exciting thing. This is all marketing, and until we read the reviews, the other exciting thing is the supposedly all those supercomputers, super brains that are apparently going to be dynamic, and basically depending on where you're driving, what kind of road conditions will adjust on the fly. The honest thing is that BMW's handling dynamics are already pretty great. I'm sure this will be also great, but I'd be curious, will even professional car reviewers even notice a difference with these active? Who knows? But I guess we'll wait for the reviews.
I like the design overall. I think it's a step forward from where BMW has been going as to date. We had models like the XM in particular, even the i4 and the M4 series, where they had these huge oversized grills, excessive creases, excessive detailing, and this BMW with their Neue Klasse design language has really toned that down quite a bit. I think the front grille, you can see where they've gotten the inspiration from, because the classic BMWs always had that sort of narrow, vertically oriented grille, and they're using that as now like a uniform graphic uh, across the across the Neue Klasse lineup. And there we can see that sort of fundamental graphic with that black sort of band is going to translate into the upcoming i3 sedan as well, which was revealed in a camouflage version, and they'll have like a wider interpretation of the grille, however retaining the same overall design graphic at the front. So the side profile is they've cleaned it up quite a bit. You have the flush door handles as with many EVs. Um, no excessive creases, and then the rear profile, they've taken a horizontal interpretation of their typical L design signature with the tail light design. So I think it has a good stance. It looks chunky as an SUV should. um, it looks like it has muscle. It looks confident on the road, but I am keen to see it in person. But it does look good on the in the photos. The interior is fascinating. Entirely new design. I like this approach more than what Mercedes and Audi are doing. To be frank, like we've seen images of the new GLC as well. The As of recording this, they haven't officially unveiled the full details of the GLC EV, which will be Mercedes' direct competitor, but they have revealed the interior, and we've seen some leaked photos of the exterior. Now, the interior of the GLC, Mercedes has just gone all out on like a huge, I think is it 43 inches OLED display or mini LED display, basically from pillar to pillar, and that's just for all screen and literally not much else. Here they they have a philosophy behind it. And their philosophy is hands on the wheel, eyes on the road, and that's why they've gone with that slim panoramic iDrive display just below the windscreen, and so you can easily see where you're driving. You just move your eyes to the bottom, you can see your speed, all the essentials, and then the main infotainment display is just one large trapezoidal display that's tilted towards the driver. So I think it's an interesting approach. It's a new philosophy. I'm very keen to look at and sit in one of these in person. Yeah. Okay. We don't have Australian pricing, but yes, to Sandip's point, I think it'll be starting at 80, 85, and I wouldn't be surprised if the version, which gives 800 kilometers range plus, will easily be six figures.
Yeah,
So
comfortably. And that's where it's like, okay, how many they're really going to sell at that
exactly,
price? Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, let's move on to our next topic, which is the 2026 Honda Prelude. So, this is Honda's sporty coupe. They've marks the return of the Prelude name, which is an iconic nameplate, especially in the early 2000s, the late 1990s, the early 1990s. They had when all of the Japanese OEMs were really going, all out on these performance vehicles. The Honda Prelude was one of Honda's examples, and now they've brought it back. It is basically I think it's fair to say it's very inspired by the Civic Coupe. It does have bespoke exterior styling, but the interior is very Civic inspired. Similar powertrain as well with their eHev hybrid system, so their twin motor hybrid system. The main difference with the Civic is that it introduces Honda's S Plus shift, so fake, more realistic but still fake gear shifts, active sound controls as well, matches the engine sound with the RPM, although in most cases it is the motor that will be driving the front wheels. So I like the styling, it's interesting, but it will be positioned a little bit more as a premium option to the Civic. It's not going anywhere near the Civic Type R, so that still is Honda's performance flagship with that with that turbocharged engine. There's Prelude is more of a comfort-oriented vehicle that still looks really, really good and has a little bit of sporting performance. But yeah, Sam, where do you think Honda will go with this vehicle, and how do you think it'll do?
I think that so while the design is really good, as you mentioned, the interior is basically a Civic interior, which is one of the best interiors in its class. But the reality is that it's already while it hasn't been priced in Australia, it's already been priced in Japan at about 64,000 if you do the equivalency. But obviously, when they sell it in Australia, it'll be more than that. So if it's 64,000 equivalent in Japan, the reality is this car will almost certainly be about 80,000 in Australia because it's apparently it's priced. I was just reading about 20% higher than the Civic Type R in Japan. So
Higher than the Civic Type
it's
R.
higher than the Civic Type R.
That's crazy.
So it is going to be in. It's going to be in a very, very specific market. It's automatic though, unlike the Civic Type R, which automatically broadens its appeal. But the reality is that there aren't going to be too many people who are going to spend $80,000 on a Honda
Exactly.
without a proper performance performance engine, and obviously no other side benefits like extra practicality and stuff. The reality is if you're in the market for that and you have that kind of money, you'd be looking at Euro cars, or even if you're looking at Japanese cars, you look at proper performance Japanese cars. Nissan Z or
Supra. That is discontinued, but still.
Yeah, correct. So the reality is with this car, the market would be extremely small, maybe because so the only similar cars to this kind of, but they're significantly cheaper, are the MX-5 and the GR86 BRZ twins. But those cars are similar to more or less two-seater predominantly with not much power, but a focus on handling. But those cars are priced at under 50,000, or at least you can get into the base model under 50,000. This car will be like at least 20, if not $25,000 more than that. And what is it really getting you over those two cars? I would argue that its design, while good, it's not like it's not that much better than MX-5.
It's not stunning.
Yeah, exactly. And the interior, yes, the interior is significantly better than the MX-5 and the GR86, no question. But really, at that price range, if you're caring about the interior, you wouldn't go Honda either. You'd go German, right? So it's like in this weird middle ground where it's not quite cheap enough to be really competitive with its actual competitors, but in its price range, it's not good enough to be competing with the Euros that it's kind of competing with. I'm sure that base 2 Series, not even the M2 just a regular 2 Series BMW will probably have similar power outputs to this, probably be more practical, and probably just as fun to drive, really, because the reality is that, so if I was in this range, I can't see how many people would actually be interested in this car. However, like the NSX, this will apparently have limited production, so it's not meant to be a mainstream car. There's only going to be a limited number, and if they're going to sell limited numbers in Japan, in Australia, I can't imagine that Honda will bring in more than probably 100. Probably no more than 100.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think Honda recently doesn't have the best track record with product planning, and especially with pricing its vehicles. Like the Civic, for what it is already extremely expensive. Like I think it's $50,000. You can get, for comparison, you can get almost a top of the range Toyota Camry hybrid, which is one segment larger, more fuel efficient, more technology, and also a nice interior with the latest generation for essentially the same price. So if Honda decides to put a 20% premium on the Civic for the Prelude, that's $80,000. You can get a 2 Series, and I think at that point, even like a 230i or a 220i, or the entry level 2 Series, to Samu's point, it's rear wheel drive firstly, so it actually has a genuine performance drivetrain. It's driving the rear wheels, as most sports cars arguably should. It's definitely more premium inside. It has more technology. Sure, it's not as fuel efficient as the Prelude, but at that point in the market, buyers aren't really looking for fuel efficiency. It's fuel efficient enough. Like, it's not outrageous with the 2 Series, but it has the style, it has the badge, and none of that is present on the Honda. Like, the Honda, fundamentally, it's not a luxury brand. Like, it just isn't. As much as Honda would like to position themselves as a premium brand, it's not at the level of Lexus, it's not at the level of Genesis even, and it's definitely not at the level of the European competition. So I'm not sure who will buy this car at $80,000, especially when you can get a Civic Type R, which has all of the performance for the same amount of price, and is actually more practical as well. So
Same interior, basically.
same interior as well, basically. So so I think Honda, unless they somehow negotiate some incredible deal with the Japanese factory, they are at risk of pricing this car out of the market. And you can see already with the Honda Accord, for example, like they are somehow still importing that and selling that, and nobody is buying it. I don't know why they're importing it, especially at the prices they've set. Like they've set the Honda Accord at 65 grand, which is a crazy price for a Camry competitor. um, yes, it is premium, supposedly, but the Honda Accord even lacks basic features. Um, at that price level, and this is going to be even more expensive than the Accord. Obviously, different market, but and supposedly it is sportier, but they're going to price themselves out of the market if they start at like $75,000-$80,000. I think that's an insane price for this car. So
agreed, yeah. And yeah, the only reason you'd get this car is if it does come in as limited numbers as it's suggested into Australia, you would have an exclusive car. It would be a very rare car on the road.
Or you're a diehard Honda fan and you have badge, you have nostalgia.
Or I think they mentioned this. Literally, people who are old enough to have remembered the original Prelude back in the 90s and now have the money to buy one.
Yeah,
that is maybe the last target demo.
I will say it does look good. I like the proportions. I do like the rear light bar. It is a good looking car, but I don't think that's going to be enough to save it at $80,000 if that's the pricing that Honda opts to go with.
Agreed, but yeah, you're have a look, by the way, at the new 2026 Honda and the thing. That's
similarities. Lots of similarities between the Toyota's hammerhead design language and Honda's design with this new Prelude. Like it's that same sort of, I wouldn't say shark nose, but it's that same sort of front design with the slim, almost C-shape headlights, that same sort of slim radiator grille and so on. So split level radiator grille. So yeah, I think actually if Toyota finally decides to bring in the Prius, the plug-in hybrid, it's a completely different type of car in the sense that it's a hatchback, it's a 5-door car, but it has a very low silhouette, the latest generation, and I think that probably makes more sense. And in the plug-in hybrid model, the Prius actually has more power than the Prelude, and it's probably faster as well. So that's another thing to consider. Hypothetical, but another thing to consider. So okay, we might wrap it up there for this particular topic with the Honda Prelude. Now, our final topic, we're going to reflect on some of our cars. So Sambib, one of Sambib's first cars was what in Australia we affectionately call the Craptiva, because it was frankly a crap car, but was a 2007 Holden Captiva, and I used to drive a 2007 R56 Mini Cooper. So Sambib, what were your favorite memories of this Craptiva, so to speak, and what did you like and what did you hate about the car?
So basically, I got the Captiva was originally bought when I was in year 10, and so we bought it in 2010. It was 3 years old at the time. I still remember it was 29,990. So for a 3-year-old Captiva, the LX trim.
Yeah.
I started driving it regularly in 2014 during my second year of uni.
Yep.
When I started basically driving to uni rather than catching the train, and certainly in 2015 and 2016 were the years I drove it the most, where it effectively became a main car to go to work and go to university and basically do everything I needed to. Now, the thing is, up until 2016 when it experienced its first fall, I actually really liked it. It was a pretty... I remember the interior feeling okay. I didn't have extremely high standards, but it felt like nicer than the interiors of most of the cars that people drive in their early 20s. Yeah. It had a reasonably sized trip computer, big buttons for everything. I remember liking the size. The only thing that was super annoying was that it didn't have a reversing camera.
Yeah. Had
And
parking. You added parking sensors,
we
right?
added parking sensors as aftermarket, but no reversing camera, which meant that it was challenging to reverse
Yeah.
because unlike a small car where okay, it doesn't matter if you have reversing camera or not, having an SUV without a reversing camera can be challenging.
Yeah.
But I guess it forced me to be a much better parker.
Yeah.
Learn how to use my mirrors to do parking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always felt like I even felt the design was good. It's probably was one of my more powerful cars because the Captiva
V6, right?
yeah, it had a V6 engine,
Yeah.
right? A D2 version of the Commodore engine, so slightly
Yeah.
less powerful than the engine in the Holden Commodore. I remember it obviously being a large SUV, carrying a lot of people. Even all the way up to 2018, because 2018 is when we lost it. Was we used its 7-seat capacity, so obviously it had 5 seats plus 2 seats at the back for which would only fit children, but still it was there as a backup. We used it a few times. Yeah, and I always remembered really enjoying driving. I
Really?
like it had obviously it was very easy to drive, very light steering.
Yeah.
Which obviously so it was never challenging to drive. It didn't feel like an old car because before that I drove a 2001 Toyota Camry. So going from a 2001 Toyota Camry to a 2007 Holden Captiva was like a huge jump, massive jump. So I remember it being very good. Obviously, while it didn't have modern day infotainment, I connecting an aux cable and connecting it to my phone meant that I could just play.
CarPlay wasn't CarPlay was around, but it wasn't really that commonplace.
Yeah, it really became big in the mid 2010s.
Yeah.
Mid 2010s. So yeah, and I remember because my university back in 2015 was in Campbelltown, having to take it on the motorway.
Yeah.
So doing a lot of motorway driving in that car. It obviously consumed a lot of petrol, but I think like everyone talked about how bad it was, but for effectively from 2010 to 2016, it basically gave us no problems, and we weren't even servicing at the dealer. We were servicing at an independent. I still remember the very first time it created a problem for me was, funnily enough, when my parents were overseas and I was alone at home.
Yeah.
I took it to a dinner that we were having with colleagues from work. So this was at Canterbury RSL Club. It got me there fine.
Yeah.
But then when I was about to head back home, I start the car and then a whole stack of messages came up. And then I basically had to drive it home with those messages. But then after that, all the messages vanished. So I assumed that it was fine after that.
Yeah.
And then after that, it occasionally gave electrical errors, but nothing engine related, never anything engine related, because we lost it when my dad was hit by another car. Not very hard, but still enough to write it off. Up until then, as I said, in 2018, which was the last year that we had it, we were still, in 2018, when my relatives came to Australia, the Captiva was the car we took them around in because it had 7 seats. So there were 3 of us, 4 of them. The Captiva was the car that we took them around in. So we took them out. I still remember one of the last long journeys I had with it was with going to Jenolan Caves in the Captiva. And if you know the road to Jenolan Caves, it's not an easy road.
No.
Very twisty and everything. Yeah.
Blue Mountains. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm very grateful almost because my next car after the Holden Captiva was a 2011 Mazda 3. And in many ways, it was backwards. Like it was much, even though I still have it now.
Yeah.
But in many ways, it was a downgrade. It was nowhere near as nice inside as it was.
Really?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
The gen afterwards that released with Skyactiv, the 2013, that was a huge upgrade. But the second gen Mazda 3 was not that amazing.
That was the one with the smiley,
the
smiley grill, and it was a bit weird,
correct.
slightly. But
the only thing I liked about it, obviously being a smaller car, was easier to park.
Yes.
That was the one reason I took it, because I was having to park my car at the station, and I remember starting to struggle to park my car in off-street parking near the station.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, having a smaller car will make it easier for me to park near the station. But other than that, I've got very good memories. It was dark blue. I've got many photos with it, even on my current phone. So yeah, I've got many fond memories. I still vividly remember the interior because obviously it had a 6-stack CD player. Yeah, all those classic features.
CD changer, that was a big feature.
Yeah, that was a big feature back then. Correct. Yeah, pretty good speaker system. Yeah, it was very nice, and for a while up until my current car, because it would have had more power than even the Mazda 6. I'm sure it
Yeah.
would have had more power than the
Yeah,
Mazda 6.
the
Yeah,
V6 engine. But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it was I very good, and you would have been inside multiple times as well. I'm
Yes.
sure. Yeah, you would have been inside
Yeah.
a few times.
I
Um,
just remember because the parking sensors were aftermarket, they used to make the most annoying,
no,
frustrating sound
yeah,
whenever Sandbib used to reverse park or have to parallel park his car. It was the most irritating
yeah,
noise.
agreed.
But yeah, I mean, I guess it was a comfortable car. I don't think it was anything, nothing to note dynamics wise or handling wise, but it did the job.
Yeah, agreed.
So I have to talk about my first car. So this is another car that my parents bought. They bought it for me. I believe it would have been towards the end of 2012, just as I was finishing high school. And we got it used. It was a 2007 Mini Cooper, and I distinctly remember uh, trying to figure out what to buy. The budget was like $20,000, so we got this one for, I think it was 19,250, and we negotiated it from 19,000. I think it was initially 21 or 20,000. Then we brought it down to 19,750, and then we met them at 19,250. So, but I remember distinctly thinking, okay, it's going to have to be a Mazda 3 because it's a little bit different, it's a bit safe, it's reliable. And I was like, oh, Mazda's so boring. I want something a little bit different. So I decided to do some creative thinking on cars. And I was like, oh, hey, Mini, it's small, it has a personality. And I really remember seeing this car the first time and just falling in love with it. Like, it was, I remember the paint color actually had an interesting name. It was called Sparkling Silver Metallic, and it was actually, despite it being sparkling silver, it was actually more of a champagne gold finish. Um, and it had a panoramic sunroof. It had a dual, by panoramic I mean it had two sunroofs. One at the back, one at the rear. It was very compact. It was such a fun car to drive. I remember initially the first couple of years I had it, I took excessively good care of it. Like, I thought it was my precious, so to speak, and I would avoid actually driving it because I was so paranoid uh, about hitting it or crashing it somewhere or accidentally getting dooring it, because it was, as a three door, the doors were slightly longer than your typical five door car. But it was very special to me, and I would only drive it on the rarest of occasions because I was very worried about damaging the car, and I was also like I was a P plater at the time, and probably not as confident on the road as I am today. And one funny story was my first job used to be at McDonald's, and McDonald's was a disgusting job. Used to work at the fry station, used to finish my casual shifts at Macca's, and my shoes would be absolutely disgusting. Like, they would have so much oil and grime and everything. And I remember thinking, okay, I do not want to get my car dirty, so I would go to Norwest Macca's, do my shift, and then take my shoes off, put it in a plastic bag, and drive barefoot or with my socks on because I didn't want to get the floor mats of my car dirty. So that's how worried I was about this car. But it was it had a very unique interior, and Sambib can attest to this as well. It had a
The big screen version,
a small digital speedo with the rev counter right in front, and then in the middle it had this huge circular speedo because they wanted to sort of take inspiration from the original Mini Cooper uh, uh, in the 50s. And it had a personality. Literally was, I know minis are marketed as that go-kart feeling, fun to drive, but it really was very fun to drive. It was so chuckable. It felt comfortable on the highway. Like, I never had any issues. It was so easy to park as well. It didn't have any parking sensors. It didn't have any reversing camera or any Bluetooth or anything. It had an aux port, which I used. And it had a 12-volt cigarette charger, which every car has. But I sort of retrofitted, so to speak, CarPlay with an aftermarket system. Had a mount, and then that plugged into the 12-volt charger, and that's how I played music, because the aftermarket CarPlay system had a USB port, and I had so many cables running that I felt like an Uber driver almost. So, and yeah, Sam, you remember constantly teasing me about how old this car was and how it was gonna fall apart any minute, right?
I remember the one thing, while I don't doubt it was fun as a driver, it was definitely not good as a passenger, simply because of the fact that the seats seemed, even the front seat seemed to be have been designed for somehow a child to get into. Because I remember never being comfortable in your passenger seat. Also, on top of that, its suspension was not
Very
crash
firm.
yeah, so you would feel every bump on the road.
Yes.
So it really was the most driver focused car, where it's like if you're anything but the driver.
You did drive this car as well, right? Did you drive the Mini?
I don't think you.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like one of the times I would
Maybe briefly around
maybe,
the block, but
yeah.
I remember. All I remember was that it's a car that was only focused on the driver.
Yeah.
Anyone else in the car will not have a very good time.
It had ambient lighting, which was very impressive for the time, and it had this switch. You could change colors from blue to purple to orange. There's essentially three colors, and you could transition between different shades of those. And I remember, like, I actually really liked the ambient lighting because this car, it had the chili pack, and it had all of the chrome. It had all the chrome highlights inside and outside as well. It had the chrome mirror caps and everything. But inside, once you were driving at night, and with the orange interior lighting and the ambient lighting, you almost felt like you were like, oh, I'm in a fancy bar, I'm in a fancy cocktail bar or something. And but yeah, I loved how creative they were with the interior design. It wasn't, yes, to Sam's point, it didn't have very comfortable suspension on smooth roads. Yeah, it would have been fine, but Australia's roads are the opposite of smooth. They're the most pockmarked, potholed roads. And do you remember the YouTube review I made?
Yes,
for
I was
this
going
car?
to say that you need to talk about that.
Yes. So, I think my favorite highlight with this car would have been the YouTube review I made. So, Car Advice, which Paul Marich, Alborz Falah, Anthony Crawford, they had, who are the founders of what is now Car Expert. Before Car Expert, they had a news website, automotive media website called Car Advice. And in 2015, that this very interesting competition, which was they asked all of their readers to submit their own car review, and it would have been a written review, but with a 2-minute video component, and upload that to YouTube, and they would rate it, and whoever won the competition, what did they get? They got they got the chance to review. They got the chance to basically be a guest reviewer for the day. And was that right, Sandra? What was
Yep,
the
correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I decided, okay, I'm going to take a punt and film a review. So I had my trusty iPhone 6, and I had my sister and my mother helping me, and we went around, and because we live in the Hills District, and I distinctly remember planning out a route because I wanted to demonstrate, okay, how firm the suspension was, and making a turn, and then the camera jerking to my sister filming in the front passenger seat with this iPhone 6 all the way at the back, so it can capture me trying to comment, and that review is still on YouTube. So if you search for "Can You Sleep in a Mini Cooper" 2007 R56 Mini Cooper review, I think it has in the 10 years now since I've since I've uploaded that video, it has a grand total of maybe 6,000 views. So I distinctly remember the camera going up and down because the suspension was so firm. So, and then I do remember actually trying to sleep in that car on 2 occasions. Firstly, for this review, because I wanted to demonstrate it was a very practical car. So I put a bodyboard in. I took that out so you can take it to the beach, and then I got some thick jumpers, threw them in the back seat, and then. and then tried to lie flat, and I'm quite a short person, so I if I crouch a little bit and have like that, try to crawl into the back seat, and I could fit just barely, but I could demonstrate it was a little bit, it was not uncomfortable, so to speak. But that was the first occasion, and then I had this time where I had a bit of an argument, and I wanted to sleep in my car for the night. So
Oh wow, okay, I didn't know that.
drove to outside Macquarie Uni and tried to sleep in my car to cool off a bit, and then drove back home. So
There you go.
that was interesting. But I love that car very much. It unfortunately. Towards the end of what was it 2021, start of 2022, it did start having some electrical problems, where you started having the speedo go, and then you started having the interior lighting system disappear as well, temporarily. Like it used to blank out all the lights, then come back, and then blank out, and then come back, and then after 5 or 10 minutes it used to settle. So it started becoming a safety issue as well, because the ignition system started having some problems. So I'd start the car and it used to be fine, and then I'd stop at a traffic light, and then it used to just completely die, and I'd have to frantically turn the ignition. And you were there a few
Yeah.
times when this
Yeah,
happened as
yeah,
well, right?
correct. Yes.
So Samuel, do you want to explain what happened?
I just remember it, yeah, the speedo not working
Yeah,
properly, which was a huge problem. And
yeah,
yes, yeah, basically electrical problems,
yeah,
but similar to my Captiva, but they would actually affect the full functioning of the
yeah.
car. By then, though, if I'm correct, you had your BMW.
I did buy my BMW, and there was a bit of overlap. I think there was like a month or two overlap.
Yeah, yeah,
Not
yeah.
much overlap, but
But
yeah,
then I remember the price you got for selling it was also quite good. You
for
didn't
the
lose
for the Mini. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think so. I drove that Mini back up, and I asked because my parents had bought it for me. I asked my parents, you can sell it and you can keep the money. And I think what was it? I think it was either
Yeah,
$11,000, or yeah, eleven.
yeah,
It was 11 K.
yeah. It was
Yeah,
definitely 11,000. Yeah.
$11,000, which, given I had it for more than 10 years, essentially, or almost 10 years, it's not bad. Like I lost maybe $8,000 or $9,000 on that car, which, given inflation and all of that stuff, it's actually it actually held its value, and we managed to fix some of the electrical problems, and then we. Sold it because I wanted to upgrade to a car that had a little bit more technology and a little bit more performance as well. So, but yeah, lots of very, very fond memories with that car. And I think out of all the cars I've had, I probably have the most affection for that car. It's definitely not the best car I've had, but it's the car that I have the most affection for as my first car. A lot of it used to turn heads. It was a very iconic design as well. So
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and now even though we're in much better cars,
yeah,
a lot of our formative driving were in our respective cars. So
yeah.
yes, it's been a pretty yeah, they were
Been a very interesting journey.
yeah.
Okay, we might end it there for this week's episode of the Hook Turn podcast. So thank you again for listening. We will catch you guys next week. Give us 5 stars, and check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of the usual podcast platforms. But thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye.